come to see you, Otis?
I just want to add to your request, which is to say, not only how do you stand in and support your folks, but also hold them accountable. That question needs to be extended to every network you watch and every news station on that network that you watch.
If you were giving democracy a grade right now in the United States, what would it be?
Oh, we're at a D for sure. We're at a D.
They have something for this. It's called the unauthorized practice of the law. And I think that's what she's just been doing.
Sherrilyn, your comments draw to mind two thoughts. One, how very, very fragile democracies are. There's no wonder why so many societies choose autocrats.
Jesus, that's you.
I mean, those of us who care about democracy, who want a different country, one of the reasons I wanted to start this 14th Amendment Center was because I want to be in the 24/7 work of thinking through, strategizing, and preparing for the building of a new American democracy.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome
Welcome home, y'all. It's episode 93 of Native Land Pod. I am your host, here with my co-host. Do y'all like when I say that? People make fun of me when I say it.
No, I'd be like, I am your host here with my subjugates. And
ain't nobody come to see you, Otis.
We're just gonna talk you through this.
I don't mean to say it like that. We are your three co-hosts. That's probably a better way to say it. We are your three co-hosts: Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum. I also feel like we always put you last, Andrew. I don't mean to do that.
I don't mind. Men, boys. Go,
okay, all right.
Take it.
Men here.
Chivalry ain't dead.
Chivalry, exactly. Okay, we got a lot to get to. It's a lot happening. So what are we talking about?
Well, one, we got a spectacular guest today who I am very, very excited that we'll get a chance to talk to. She is really all-knowing, all-being, everywhere on all things, and that's Miss Sherrilyn Ifill.
Jesus, that's you?
Yeah? Me?
I said, I'm talking about you saying all-being, all-knowing. I'm
She's
like,
all things, everywhere.
I hear that. Okay.
What you got, Angela?
I got the same. I got democracy on the line, and I want to talk about it. We also are talking about Donald Trump even going at the museums. We've heard about this for some time. He's saying, why we all got to focus on slavery. And sadly, there was a black show with a black show host that allowed a guest to challenge this very same thing. So we're going to get into all that today. Was slavery bad?
We are unfiltered on Native Land Pod, and I'm honestly chomping at the bit to get into all of this. So let's get into it. I'm so excited to bring on this next guest. Angela texted our group chat last night that she had texted Madam Sherrilyn Ifill to join us, and I was so thrilled that she was available to join us. So let me tell you a little bit, if you've been living under a rock and don't know. Miss Sherrilyn Ifill is a civil rights lawyer, a founding director of the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy at the Howard University School of Law. She most recently, before that position, sat at the helm of the NAACP LDF and has a long list of accolades that we could exhaust the airwaves with, but I'm just thrilled to have her here. I was honored to be there, actually, when she commenced the opening of the 14th Amendment for the Center of Law and Democracy at HU, for all you Howard people out there listening. So very thrilled to welcome you to Native Land Pod. Welcome home.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be with you all. And Tiffany, I don't feel like I had the chance to really thank you for being there. It meant a lot to me that you were there for the opening of the new 14th Amendment Center at Howard Law School.
I was thrilled to be there, and thank you for the invite. I came all the way to see you, and I was double booked. I had a business dinner back downtown, so I was there, and I was trying to slip out. And as I was walking down the stairs, you started talking about Elaine, Arkansas. And I turned around and took those stairs two at a time because I did not want to miss what you had to say about the slaughter that happened to Black folks there, which is very on theme with what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I told these guys, I told Angela and Andrew, I don't remember what you were talking about, but you were saying something about a precedent that you had not been taught in law school. And you said, I mean, it's a lot of lawyers here. Were any of you guys taught this? And this huge section of people started clapping and you started laughing and you said, those are all of my students because they had learned this important precedent from you. So it just speaks to the leader that you have always been. So we're thrilled to have you. And
Thank you.
we were talking in our group chat. I want to let you know, I didn't know I'm an attorney too. Angela's our resident attorney, but our friend Erin Haynes said, listen, if you watch Law and Order, then you have a fair amount of wisdom. So I'm going to call myself an attorney, but I will
There's
yield
some
the floor.
lawyers with 3 years of law
think
school and years of service
they
that are going
actually
to
have
question that.
something. They have something for this. It's called the unauthorized practice of the law, and I
Yes.
think that's what she
Yes.
My
just
daddy thought he was one too. Yeah.
I yield the floor to the actual attorney, Angela, and I will listen and learn.
Oh man! Well, you know how much we love you, Sherrilyn. I was sharing with the team earlier. We have a gazillion stories about moments with you where you have set the tone and have been very clear. And I was reflecting on our time in Baltimore for the State of the People National Assembly, where you really were giving us a very clear indication of where we are as a democracy. And I would love for you to talk about where you think we are now. We're seeing the Smithsonian takeover. We're seeing the National Guard coming in from other states into DC to harass our children. We're, of course, seeing this crazy situation unfold in Texas with redistricting. I'd love to know, if you were giving democracy a grade right now in the United States, what would it be?
Oh, we're at a D for sure. We're at a D. We are really right now fighting over the remnants. We're fighting over maintaining enough of the foundations that we could build something new on. I mean, those of us who care about democracy, who want a different country. One of the reasons I wanted to start this 14th Amendment Center was because I want to be in the 24/7 work of thinking through, strategizing, and preparing for the building of a new American democracy. And but to build it, I recognize you need some of the stuff. You need some things in the foundation that you can build on. And we're getting perilously low on the integrity of the foundations that we would rebuild on if we were to have a chance to rebuild. Will we have a chance to rebuild? There's no guarantees there, and it's a ways off. And so the process that we're in right now has to be one in which we are ever thinking towards the future, and we're also thinking about our survival. A key piece is, how do we survive this period with our integrity intact, our dignity intact, our families intact, and our communities intact, because that's who we are on this continent. We're always trying to figure out how we survive this thing and make it to the next thing. Now, we want to thrive for sure, but I want to be very clear that the opportunities for that will be very narrow in the coming years for a broad set of people. And that means it is incumbent on those of us who have been beneficiaries of the sacrifices that were made early on among our ancestors to take up our obligation to do the same for those that come after us. But right now, democracies are made up of citizens, of people, but also critically made up of institutions that hold democracy together. And the worst of this moment is not that 40%, maybe 45% of Americans are fully okay with an authoritarian takeover of our country. And maybe another 10% are prepared to just watch an authoritarian takeover of our country. That's bad. But what will make this democracy completely crumble, if it does, is the absolute collapse of democratic institutions. What are democratic institutions? Well, there's no healthy democracy you can point to in the world that doesn't have a strong and free and independent media, that doesn't have a strong, free, and independent civil service, that doesn't have a strong, free, and independent university system, that doesn't have a strong business community that functions with integrity, that doesn't have a legal system that upholds the rule of law and in which legal professionals are held to a high standard of performance. There's no healthy democracy in the world that doesn't have a strong and independent court system. And if you tick off those lists for all of us right now, Every single one of the core institutions of democracy in this country has failed. And that, more than anything else, is why we are where we are today. Systems of government are not just about who gets elected in one election, it's a system. It sustains itself over multiple elections. And no one person, especially a person of Donald Trump's caliber, who for all his bluster didn't know shit from Shinola about politics before 2016. He knew about manipulation, he knew about narrative, he knew about image making, he knew about white supremacy and how to appeal to it, but he didn't know shit from Shinola about politics and government. No one person with that diminished knowledge can come in and hijack the most powerful and wealthy democracy in the world unless it is already in trouble. And that's, I'm writing this book now called Is This America? And that's what the book is about. It's about why we were already in trouble. And you all know this, because it's all the people who think the world was perfect when Obama was president or Clinton was president or Biden was president. And I've been a civil rights lawyer for 35 years, never been out of work. It has not been perfect. But we had institutions attempting to hold the line. And now we have seen the biggest and most wealthy law firms in the world collapse. We've seen the biggest and most revered universities collapse. We've seen the media just utterly freaking collapse. And you can't save a democracy and you can't have democracy unless you have an institutional structure to uphold it.
That's powerful. That's extremely powerful and sobering. And I didn't expect anything otherwise from you, Sherrilyn. Your comments draw to mind two thoughts. One, how very, very fragile democracies are. There's no wonder why so many societies choose autocrats, monarchies, a strong man as leaders, because for the average person, it's the easier route. They don't have to work to maintain it. Mm-hmm. It does rest on an individual, a set of individuals, a family. But in this case, the fragility is like front and center. But the second thing you made me think about, which was actually the first thing, was something we all know well, which is you never let a good crisis go to waste. Mm-hmm. And when you began talking about envisioning and dreaming about what you build on top of when things are lost, when all is lost and the slate is almost clear, there are some founding and important building blocks. But when you start to think about what it looks like to scale this thing, are there some imaginative thoughts that you feel prepared to share with us around, man, if this system is leveled, what do we build back? Or what never existed, do we now make some allowance to exist so that we can all be on the way to thriving? Any thoughts come to mind to you for, I know the answer is yes.
No,
I don't know exactly what the thoughts are.
I think about, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking over you. I'm thinking about a lot of things. And first of all, Andrew, it's just wonderful to see you again. And I so wish you were the governor of Florida, but
amen.
But, I was just writing the first chapter of my book, which is about something we lost, and that we lost as a result. Most of the things that we lose in this country that are essential to democracy, we begin to lose because of white supremacist ideology. And one of the things we lost is our commitment to an investment in, what we call public goods. And public goods are those things and those places that a society, a government ensures are in place, that the public engages with and can enjoy and can access together. And these public goods play an incredibly powerful role in helping unify people in a democracy and helping them feel they're part of the same project, if you know what I mean. So, that's for example, I love the post office. I know that's old school, but bear with me. The post office is a fundamentally democratic institution, right? You put that one stamp on your envelope, and it goes to California, it goes to Florida, it goes to New York. I put on the same stamp you put on, You put on the same stamp Tiffany puts on, Tiffany puts on the same stamp Angela puts on, and we all can communicate with each other using this service that is provided by the government. When you walk into a neighborhood and you see the postal truck parked there, right? You know that's a neighborhood. In fact, we don't even see it anymore. It's like air.
Yeah.
But it's a symbol of something important. It's a symbol that the government is there, is servicing that area. One of the reasons when people say, oh, it all needs to be privatized, one of the reasons the post office is so important is because even services like FedEx still use the post office for what we call the last mile. FedEx is not coming up that mountain to deliver nothing. What they do is they deliver it to the closest place, and the United States Postal Service, which is required to serve every home, right, and every edifice, takes that package the last mile. So that means people in rural America know that they're going to get their Social Security checks. They know they can wait on that letter from their child or their grandchild. This is a powerful and important service and exists all over the world. If you've ever stood in the line several weeks prior to Christmas with your packages waiting to mail them out in the post office, and you think about the conversations that happen in that line, right? And all the, when is it going to arrive and where is it going and all that stuff. All of those are the things that knit us together. And the post office is just one example. And we should remember that the post office, which was created in the 80s, Ben Franklin was the first postmaster, was one of the earliest places after the Civil War where Black people could get federal jobs. And it's one of the reasons why, as there was the resistance to Reconstruction and violence, postal workers were the ones very often attacked by remaining Confederates in the South. The post office symbolized the federal government. The postal worker symbolized the federal government. And to be a Black postal worker said something incredibly powerful because it meant that the United States government trusted you with the money, the mail, all of this official business. You know how if you always see the lines that if you ruin mail, it's a federal offense. It is, right? That it's a job of importance because they speak for the government. They are part of the federal government. Well, what happened after Brown versus Board of Education is that slowly but surely, and not even that slowly, there developed a narrative about public goods. Prior to Brown, we had public goods and they were not controversial. White people loved them too. White people loved public housing. They are the ones who public housing was originally built for. And they benefited amazingly from the New Deal programs that were imposed in order to address and deal with the Great Depression. So the Works Projects Association, the NLRB, which the Fifth Circuit has just said is unconstitutional, the National Labor Relations Board, all of the things that came through the New Deal. But here's how they maintained white support for those public goods. They carved Black people out of them. So Southern segregationists were very clear that, in fact, the South was the greatest beneficiary of New Deal programs. But what they wanted to make sure was that their power structure remained unchanged.
That's right.
And Franklin Delano Roosevelt was willing to cut those deals because he needed the Southern segregationists in Congress to support the legislation to bring the New Deal forward. So that's why Black people didn't have access to Social Security when the Social Security Act was passed in 1934. Because what they carved out of the Social Security Act were agricultural workers and domestic workers. Now, in 1934, what were most Black people doing? Most Black people were sharecropping or were working as domestics in the homes of white people in the South. So Black people were carved out of Social Security, and I think not actually added to it until 1952. I want to say it was Eisenhower. And so public goods were fine so long as they were not being given on an equal basis with white people, right? Segregated public housing. That was another, when public housing was being built in the 30s and 40s, it was, FDR's aides who said, we have to acquiesce to Southerners who want public housing to be segregated. And that's why there was segregated public housing. all of the buildings that were built to work on New Deal projects were segregated, and the Black housing was always substandard. So while there was that pact, that understanding that if we have public goods, if we have public schools, Black people are going to get the underfunded public schools and white people will get the state of the art schools, right? Central High School in Little Rock was seen as the high school. It was seen as, I've read accounts of white students, there was a fish pond at the bottom of the stairs. I mean, they were very proud of that school. The same thing with Central High School in Washington, D.C. They were very proud of it. Well, after Brown versus Board of Education, when the Supreme Court said, first, in terms of education, it has to be shared on an equal basis and there has to be integration. What was the first reaction and response? The first reaction and response was to withdraw from participation in public goods, keeping their kids home from school. It was, you can decide which one is worse. The kids howling outside Central High School in Little Rock to keep 9 Black students out, or no kids being in school with Ruby Bridges in New Orleans so that she's in the whole school by herself. Or you can decide that it's Prince Williams County, Virginia, closing the public schools for 5 years rather than integrate and building segregation academies to educate their kids. Now, you can pick from among those which one you think is the worst, but they all amount to the same thing. The withdrawal from what is the most important public good in any democracy, and that is public schools, K through 12. Why? Because that is where we inculcate the values of citizenship and what it means to live in this country. And we should be doing it together. And they know that as well. So our whole relationship to public schools that changed came out of came out of Brown. And then when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 said that all public goods had to be shared on an equal basis, then we saw the withdrawal from all the other public goods. And by the time we got to the 1980s with Ronald Reagan, it was ordinary to exalt that which is private and to denigrate that which is public. If I say public transportation, the image in your mind has Black people in it. If I say public schools, the image in your mind has Black and brown people in it. This is when we get the gated community. This is when we get the backyard pool. All of our communities had pools. Baltimore had public pools. We all have we have them again now, thanks to Brandon Scott. But we all have public pools. We had public golf courses in all our cities. And when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed and was signed by President Johnson, this act included a provision called Title VI, which says that federal funds cannot support state and local programs that engage in discrimination. It was actually created to force compliance with Brown, to force schools to comply with Brown. People like me were bused to school in the immediate years after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, because that's when northern school districts who had kind of stayed out of the integration conversation around school, but who were also segregated, right? Not segregated by statute, but by custom. They started integrating their schools because they got nervous and afraid about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So when you hear about kids getting bused, Black kids getting bused to school in the North, Boston, Chicago, Denver, New York, it is usually after 1964, right? So I first went to school in 1968. So now you have this rule but it's not only schools. It's you can't get any federal funds if your parks department, right, discriminates and keeps Black kids out of the pool, right? So now everything has to integrate. And that's when we see the full-on white withdrawal. We see white flight, white people moving out of cities, right? We see the decimation of public goods like parks and swimming pools. We see white pullout of public schools and thus the defunding of public schools. We see all of that. And that is, you cannot build a society that is multiracial as a democracy like that. And let me give the U.S. a little bit of credit here for the you get points for the difficulty of the project. We're doing the most difficult project. There is no other country in the world that we're pointing to and saying, see, they got the multiracial democracy thing right. It's just not a thing. Right. And that's why when people say, oh, but look at the criminal justice system in Norway. Right. Because they're all white. And when you have a system in which people are not different from one another, there's built-in trust. There's built-in trust. We're fighting against a very different tide, the tide of a place of difference. Which is part of what makes this country, if you want to say great, is that there's all this difference. But all that difference means the project of holding together that population in a democracy is extremely challenging. And so it even looked like I'm answering Andrew's question. My recognition for the future is we have to be actually especially careful and intentional about creating public goods that force us together. We actually have to be thoughtful about that. There's a section of my book where I talk about public parks, because that's what we did as kids. Our family, there were 10 kids in my family. So we did not go on vacations, but we did pack that hamper, with the chicken and the sandwiches and whatever. And we went to every public park. We went to Bear Mountain. We went to Sunken Meadow. We went to Wildwood State Park. That's what we would do on Labor Day, on Memorial Day, on these holidays. And just the experience in a public park in a place like New York, right? Where you put your blanket. Nobody wants to be too up in somebody's, but you're learning these lessons about accommodation without actually learning a lesson like in school. Right?
Yeah.
And so you learn and you're watching people, right? And the people next to you are making food that's very different than yours, right? And they're treating their kids differently than you treat yours. And something's on the grill over here that smells really good. And you want to go over there and look at it, and your older sisters are saying, "Get out, go over here, leave those people alone." But you want to see, what's that meat they put on the grill? I've never seen that, but there's all this stuff that's happening in a public space, and you are just without having to have an explicit conversation, accommodating the differences around you. You get on the New York City subway. We don't talk about it, but there is an understanding as you're holding the pole, right? People's hands are different places on the pole. You don't put your hand over somebody's, you know what I mean? There is a whole accommodation that happens when we're together. It's very different. Us all sitting in 4 different studios right now. Or if we were in an auditorium together and we were sitting next to each other, because we would very quietly, without even talking about it, decide whose arm went on which armrest. Right. Yeah. And we might say, "Oh, Andrew, you're the tallest, so you sit on the end so your leg could be." There's all kinds of things we do just in the process of being together. That's actually not about who did you vote for. It's actually not about race. It's not about any of that. And we just do it. Without those opportunities, without those experiences, it is very difficult to begin to knit together a population. I understand this is a small example, but it is, if you scale it up, it becomes universities, right? It becomes public housing. It becomes all of those places where the stakes are high. And so when you see this effort, this unrelenting effort since it started against affirmative action and now against DEI, right? It is a deliberate counter to creating contexts that compel us to be together and to see one another, to see one another's humanity in an environment that asks all of us of all of us the same thing, and where we have the opportunity to bring the same thing to the table. So one thing is thinking about how we would restructure, and this is even architectural. That's why it's a multidisciplinary project. What do we want our cities to look like? What do we want our towns to look like? I believe the school should be the center of the town. Right? Yeah. Everything you know about a community, you should know by visiting their elementary school, their high school. You should just know whether they value kids, whether they value sports, what did they believe about green space, what did they believe about food and access, all of that stuff should be. So we were even thinking about, we were getting infrastructure money. That's what I was thinking about. I mean, I pushed very hard with the Secretary of Education and the Biden administration as they were making their plans that we needed school infrastructure money. We needed to be able to build new schools so that we could see it differently and pull kids together differently, So it requires that kind of thinking. Obviously, I have lots of thinking about law in my profession. I have lots of thinking about the Supreme Court, which is, I'm no longer interested in the conversation about the personnel. I'm interested in a conversation about structuring a Supreme Court that could make sense. The structure has failed.
I'm glad you brought up the Supreme Court. Where unfortunately our time is always so tight on this podcast, so we may only have time for another one or two questions. So I just want to try to get one in. You said a lot there. One, you gave a shout out to Brandon Scott. I just want to let our listeners and viewers across the country know that is the mayor of Baltimore, who you gave a shout out to. You also bringing up the courts, because I have a lot of laypersons questions about what we see happening here, and I want to take us to the very current situation of what's happening in Texas. And I was asking Angela earlier in the week about keeping Nikole Collier, who's, of course, the state representative in Texas, who is, and from my layperson's perspective, is being held captive. She is. It looks like false imprisonment to me. And so Angela and our friend Brittany Packnett Cunningham were sending me, language around the rules for their legislature, which they were trying to explain to me is essentially treated like the law. Sunny Hassan, another fellow lawyer, saying this is what exists until a court says it doesn't. I keep saying I do not believe the courts will hold. I just, and everything that you laid out, from a capitulating media landscape that we see to the third co-equal branch of government, I don't see the courts holding. So even if this case were to go before a court saying, yes, you cannot lock this Black woman up, what is wrong with you all? I think it can just escalate, perhaps all the way to the Supreme Court. So and it sends a message, I think, to the country, to other potential Republican governors, that it is okay to we already see we've declared it's okay to kidnap people off the street without due process. Masked men can come and snatch any one of us. We've already declared that. And so this is very scary to me. That we're almost normalizing this, that we're talking about it. I see on cable news, they present it like it's fodder. Like, well, what do you think about this? Instead of outrage, like, oh my God, where is the country going? I'm just curious your thoughts on that. And I know Angela had another question, so I don't want you to take up too much time for that.
I'll do it real fast. I want Angela
to be able to get to her question. Okay.
I'll do it real fast. I think you hit, the nail on the head. It is true that, this stuff will be litigated, and it'll be whatever a court says. It'll be first whatever the highest court in Texas says, and then it'll be what the Supreme Court says. And I just think you hit the nail on the head. The reason this time is so scary is because the courts have not held. Now, there are the courts and the courts. The federal district courts have been amazing. And what has been shocking to see is how much the Supreme Court, the majority of conservative justices on that court, are so set on their agenda that they are willing to disparage and pull into ill repute the federal district court judges, right, who are deciding things they don't like. But the federal district court judges are the ones who are like pulling out the facts and figuring out exactly what happened. And so I think you have every right to be alarmed by the fact that the courts may not hold. And that's why it was so important for people to understand the significance of the courts. It was important for advocates like me and others to make clear to our people why the courts were so significant, and to make it understood, and to make it understood in layman's terms, and to get out of the whole conversation, the insider conversation about the courts and the justices and who's an institutionalist and so on and so forth. I've watched every Supreme Court confirmation hearing since I was 10.
Get it?
Right? I mean, this is my thing. Like, I'm so clear about it, and I just think that we have now gotten ourselves in quite a pickle. And I don't think there's any easy way out of it. I think there's some things that John Roberts will pump the brakes on, but never about race. He's always been one of the leaders. He worked in the Reagan Justice Department. He was vociferously opposed to the amendments to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. He has always been an anti-civil rights person. So there may be other things that, on an executive power that he may, come around on, but it ain't going to be on is Section 2 a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendments. It's not going to be I've become convinced it's not going to be on birthright citizenship. Like, it's not going to be anything that doesn't serve this current agenda. And the mistake, I think, that many of us got too late, myself included, is while I knew that I've always said they were right wing, I did not know they were MAGA until the decision saying that the president has immunity for any acts he commits while he's president, as long as they can be deemed as official acts, including criminal acts.
Was that the beginning of the unraveling? Was it that moment, Sherrilyn, when you said
that was the
before
crystallization. That was the crystallization that they are on. I thought so with the insurrection decision, the decision to basically kind of stand down Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says if you participated in insurrection, you can't be on the ballot. And Colorado had removed President Trump from the ballot in 2024. And the case went to the Supreme Court, and they said a lot of things, and in the end said, well, we would need an act of Congress, even though you have it clearly set forth in the 14th Amendment. I thought so then because of the dissents from Justices Sotomayor, Jackson, and Kagan. I felt their dissent, the tone of it, the words they said was a flare. I thought they were warning us of what was happening with their colleagues. They weren't just saying that they were right wing. There was some language where they said, you've taken a decision in order to insulate this president or any after him, like that, in order to insulate him, like just it really stuck out to me. And so that's when I first thought, like, are they telling us that, wait a minute, right? And then we got the immunity decision, and that has convinced me in ways I had not been convinced before. And it's frightening. It's very, very frightening, and there's no easy way out of it at all. But I say all of that.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't say this so that we are in despair and believe that there's no way out, because, civil rights advancement is like a cocktail of things. We all know the different elements that we use. There are boycotts, and there are stand downs, and there are general strikes, and there's litigation, and there's marching, and there's protesting, and there's shaming, and there's educating, and these are all the elements, and then you shake them all up. But there's always something else that is completely unexpected, that we don't have any control over, that also ends up in the mix, that moves things in ways that are unexpected. My concern always is, like, have you put all the other stuff in the mix so that we're ready to go when the Deus ex machina happens, when the secret sauce comes from the outside to move things forward. It's not the secret sauce is not always great, by the way. It's sometimes very painful. In the civil rights movement, there's nothing that we got that didn't happen before there was some horrifyingly violent attack. We don't get.
Sherrilyn, you mentioned that you didn't want us to be in despair. And in a special moment recently, we were wrestling with this question. We've been doing it on the podcast too. What is not under attack in this country? And you mentioned a really special conversation you had with Hank Sanders in Selma. And I would love for that to be our parting words, to give us a little bit of hope. And so I said, we don't have a silver lining where it's glitter.
And to be clear, I am always hopeful. I am when people ask me if I'm optimistic because I know what the end's going to be. I understand that the struggle to get there, in that struggle, many people will be hurt. That's what infuriates me, empowers me, and we have the right to try to minimize those as much as possible. But I don't have any doubt of where we're going to be, because we don't fight with the same tools they fight with. We just don't. And Hank Sanders, who's a civil rights activist and lawyer, served in the state house in Alabama, always says to me that during the civil rights movement, they had all the law and all the guns and all the dogs. And we had our prayers, our songs, our feet, and our moral sense of what was right. And we were able to overcome them again and again. And so if we're counting up, what they have and what they got, all these Supreme Court justices, they got all this, they got all that.
Yeah.
That's not really how it works. We're not going to work We're not going to win using their tools. We're never going to have as much money.
That's it.
We're never going to have the weaponry or the willingness to use it. We're never going to have all the offices that they control. We're never going to have the same level of political power. We are 14% of the population of the United States. We're not having it, but we punch above our weight. There's a reason that white people, when they do the Washington Post poll, think that we're 50% of the population, because we are just so, we saturate because we control the culture, because we control the narrative, because they like to look at us. There's all kinds of little intangibles about who we are as Black people in this country that gives us power. And when we show up in the space, when we speak, it ruptures something, it disturbs, it troubles the waters. And so we have to not think we are smaller than we are. We shouldn't think we're bigger than we are, for sure. But we should know that we fight with tools that maximize our size in ways that cannot be explained by math. You know, it's like feeding the 5,000 with however many loaves of bread, right? It's not math. It's not math, right? There is a spiritual power. And when we are activated and united and believe that we are going to walk towards what is right, it maximizes power and it disarms our opponent. That's what we have to go for. It's not that we want to fight them hand to hand and somehow we win in hand-to-hand combat. No, we want to take the knowledge, the numbers, the force, the moral force, the demand, the strategic thinking that we have and disarm them. I'm trying to make them let their own arms down. I'm trying to make them stumble first and foremost. I don't want to fight them at full strength. I want them to trip and fall, and then we can fight. I want them to forget something that's important. I want them weak.
Yeah.
And that's the power we have, is to disarm our enemies so that we are in a better position to overcome them.
Well, thank you. I feel so inadequate calling you Sherrilyn. It feels so, I don't know why it feels so uncomfortable. I feel like I should be saying Your Honor, the Honorable.
Her Excellency.
Please.
Yes, Her Excellency. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay. All right. Well, if you insist.
Prophetess.
Her Excellency, the prophetess.
There it is.
Sherrilyn, you may know this
Counselor.
already. You may know this already, but I am a very, very verbal and expressive, like amen corner. And my colleagues warned me to muzzle so that I wouldn't mess with your audio. And I felt like I was going to explode like a balloon all the way through this thing.
You could have given me a wave off.
Bringing it as you always do. And so I've got to adopt some of my grandmama's, church mannerisms where, she can't speak out. But she just...
Yes, exactly.
But thank you.
I was on mute, Andrew. I was on mute, amening. I literally had to be on mute to be like, it was good.
Overwhelming. And not just with the warnings and the forecasting, because they told us we didn't believe. And I want to hear, can't wait to read that in your book. But also the resilience, your reminder of our resilience, our punching above our weight, our endurance, and the fact that we do know what the end is going to be. Let's not pretend. There's some things we do know, and it's not in a book, but it's been assured, right? It's already been promised.
Well,
so
Sherrilyn
thank you for
gotta
that.
come
You're a
back to
gift.
continue
Thank
this
you.
sermon.
Yes,
This is
exactly.
good. We can't wait.
Please come back. We would really love to have you back. And I hope I get to see you in person again soon. Anytime you're doing something at Howard, I would be honored to be there and show up. And we're so grateful to you for taking time to join us today.
I have an idea. We should do a live pod with the 14th Amendment Center at Howard Law if we can do it.
I'm down.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it. We have the perfect
Well, we were there.
in the law
we did
library.
a live show there.
But that was a very sad
that.
night. I'm with you, Sherrilyn. We there.
Yeah.
In
the center space itself, we should do the show. It would be amazing, and the students would absolutely love it. And we owe it to them. This is tough for them.
Yeah.
And our job right now, we have to unlock the doors. We have to give them a chance to understand how this fits in the whole thing. We have to help them understand that.
Thank
Take care of yourself until we see you.
We love you.
Take care, y'all.
Please.
Keep doing good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherrilyn.
Oh, godly.
That was so great, you guys. I mean, honestly, she's so amazing. Something that I really take away from that I struggle with, I still question is because she touched on this. And I appreciate her saying, like, we will get through this. Like, she's not suggesting that we are in despair. I love what she shared with the conversation with her and Hank Sanders. Oh my God. I think that's such I would have loved to hear it from him saying this is all we had. It's just, I feel overwhelmed. But the thing that I'm left with is, what is our red line? And just quickly for the viewers, if you all are as struck as we are, please, please, please spread the word, share this podcast, like, subscribe, send it around, because people like Sherrilyn Ifill join because we have an audience like you. Like, they literally come not to talk to us. They can talk to us anytime. They can text us, call us, see us, but they come to reach the people who tune in to us. So thank you to our regular viewers, our faithful viewers, but please do continue to spread the word about Native Land Pod, because we are living in service to the liberation of Black folks, and that liberates everybody everywhere. So I just think, what is that red line for society at large? And we may have a viewer question or comment that speaks to that. I don't know, because I didn't even get a chance to look at all of our viewer questions. But I feel like that red line has been crossed 100 times, personally.
Hey, Andrew, Angela, and Tiffany. This is Monte from Maryland, and wanted to discuss something that Andrew kind of alluded to a week or so ago. Trump was not able to steal the election due to Mike Pence saying, hey, the Constitution will not allow me to do this, so I can't. But with somebody like J.D. Vance sitting in the vice presidency, what is the recourse should J.D. Vance just say, I'm not going to certify the next election? I know there's nothing in the Constitution about it because the founders never thought we'd be here, but is there any recourse that we have if J.D. Vance, just following his servitude to Trump, just said, I'm not going to certify the election for blah, blah, blah reason? I know it'll go through the courts, but is there anything standing that says, no, this cannot happen, or no, he will not do this or cannot do this? Just was anxious to get your thoughts on that. Again, thank you for all you do, and welcome home.
All right. I love that from Monty. And I actually didn't think that was a strand that was going to get picked up on, because I think we do have to drive people to what the conclusion is. When we had on the episode a couple of weeks ago around why it is they're playing with the numbers in the House and who counts the electoral votes that come in from each state for certification, part of that process requires that both the House and the Senate accept the results as they come in through their express vote. When it got to the Senate, the reason why J.D. Vance's vote would matter, or actually, I'm sorry, the reason why Kamala Harris's vote mattered was because of this closeness. She was the tiebreaker in a 50-50 Senate. In this case, there is not a 50-50 Senate. The Republicans have the majority. They don't need J.D. Vance to break a tie. So the vice president will be less important in that scenario unless you had Republicans who were actually going to say, we are not going to do that. We're going to vote to accept the results from the election. The vice president undoubtedly plays an important role. The courts, I think, given the conversation we just had with Sherrilyn, and I think most of us probably agree, there's not a lot of hope when you look at the Supreme Court with the conservative majority that they would do anything to offend, abridge, wrangle the power of Donald Trump. So I'm not in that. I'm hoping that won't be our scenario. The best scenario is that we have folks with honesty and dignity who don't steal elections. But if they do, we've got to make sure that we've got enough of a margin that it doesn't get close. And that's why this redistricting fight is so important, that if they take a few seats here, convert a few seats here, they throw us in a scenario that a majority of members of the Congress can vote to reject the Electoral College votes that declare anybody else president other than Donald Trump.
That's really good, Andrew. That was sometimes on this podcast, I feel like I'm an audience member. Like, I'm just listening to, sometimes you guys say things so insightful. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm on here. I should weigh in here. But that's really good. A good way to explain it. And look, that is a red line.
That is
you know,
true,
you
yeah.
know,
It is a red line.
that was a it should have been a red line then to highlight the fissures
Absolutely.
in our democracy. So,
Well, now it's burgundy. And the only flag I would say, Andrew, to the point, is we don't know what the makeup of the Senate will be after the 26th
right.
election. And so, if that becomes the case where he is a tie-breaking vote, what will he do? And what will the tech bros allow him to do? That should also be a mini pod. This tech bro situation is nuts.
And Angela, if you follow the logic of the court, and I know you do, it is that they will rest with the decision of that institution as a co-equal branch of government. They've been willing to allow that institution to decide what it wants to do without checking it. So if they say J.D. Vance has a tie-breaking vote and he says reject the Constitution, the ballots from the states, the court is loath to do anything at this rate, given their pattern.
Yeah. So on this, we've been talking a lot about a red line today. What is at stake in terms of democracy? We had Sherrilyn Ifill on, who's always a sage voice, and gave a prolific history lesson, which we may need to be relying upon more as times go by. Why?
That's real.
Because we've been talking about the Smithsonian is under attack. Lonnie Bunch just received a letter from Donald Trump last week saying all of the ways in which they're going to look at these museums. But before that, well, we have to be accountable for y'all. And by we in this moment, I mean all America. So really MAGA, y'all, this is y'all. Is how you are talking about the institutions that framed and founded this country. So there's a conversation recently that was held on a CNN show, and I want to go ahead and run the clip that was that took place on that show.
Have you looked at some of the things that are being reviewed?
Slavery was a bad thing that was to talk about.
Okay.
Like, he's
not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No,
okay.
He's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you
can't tie slavery.
Let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery?
Wait a second.
Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Revisionism. Do you realize that?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and who was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history.
Okay.
In the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that
it
was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there.
So we're not going to litigate those points because they're not litigatable. What we are going to do now is play Nikole Hannah-Jones.
Who gave her license to do that?
Nikole Hannah-Jones' response. And we'll get to that shortly, Andrew Gillum. Let's play her response.
I do not usually do these videos, but as a creator of the 1619 Project and someone who has studied the history of slavery for 3 decades, I could not let that viral CNN clip of Jillian Michaels stand. I have to first state that the times are far too serious and dangerous for us to lend our platforms to harmful nonsense. It's simply irresponsible, with everything that's happening in this country, to have someone as credentialist as Jillian Michaels on a major network show legitimizing the erasure of our history. Now, I know there have been some viral efforts to debunk her claim that somehow slavery was a side institution in the United States because less than 2% of white people owned slaves. But even those efforts, while valiant, by embracing this right-wing framing, they still aren't really getting to it. You see, this is how numbers and data, though technically true, can also be lies. And this is why we can't let bad faith actors set the parameters of the debate or of our collective understanding. So please bear with me because this is a lot. Let's take the fewer than 2% of white people own slaves at face value, though we know that number is technically incorrect. And let's apply that standard to any other industry. What percentage of Americans own social media companies or technology companies such as Apple? It's a tiny percentage. I'm doubtful if it's even 1% of Americans. And yet no one would credibly argue that social media companies are not ubiquitous across American life. that they don't play a major influence on our political, social, and economic life in America. And in fact, what we know is that more than 70% of Americans use social media, though hardly any Americans own social media platform. There's a reason that the heads of Meta, Apple, and Amazon, Google, and X all took part in Trump's inauguration festivities, with several of them standing on the actual dais during Trump's inauguration.
So, I think this is important to do because this is Nikole Hannah-Jones fact check. 5 days after Jillian Michaels is on the show, which gives ample time for any media outlet, really, to respond. Any media outlet. Maybe it's not just Abby's response, right? Like, maybe not. But after Nikole Hannah-Jones posts, Abby Phillips had this to say on her show on Tuesday night.
Last week on this show, a guest shocked the table by arguing in part that slavery in America can't just be blamed on one race, and that museums put too much focus on the role of white people who participated in that terrible institution. And now tonight, that same argument is being pushed by the President of the United States. Donald Trump says that one of the reasons for his crackdown on Smithsonian museums is, quote, everything discussed is how bad slavery was. What we try to do on this program is create a platform for discussion and debate that reflects the very real differences that exist in this country. It's what echo chambers in our society fail to do, frankly. But on this topic, it's important to say objectively, slavery was indeed bad.
Andrew, Tiff, do you want to answer whether or not you believe slavery was bad and whether or not in this day and age that should be litigated? We had Donald Trump's social post from Abby's screen. We can also put that up if you all need to read it. But he's very concerned with the fact that we're spending a lot of time on wokeism. That the Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was. And I'd love to know if you all have a silver lining like Bill O'Reilly about how we were fed and slept well in these times.
Honestly, I think it's so beneath our dignity to even engage that. I think to even debate it legitimizes their perspective, which is part of the danger. And listen, I feel very uncomfortable and awkward weighing in on this for a few reasons. One, I know Abby. I've known Abby for a long time, and I like her personally.
Yeah.
So I want to be, and I know you do too. I want to be careful. Like, I'm not trying to say this is all, like what Abby should have done, because I think this is network issue. Her show is not the only person who platforms problematic people. The network itself does. And because y'all are listening to some free blacks, listen, I'm going to give this truth, and you can invite me or not invite me on the network ever again. I think it is not courage if there is not a sacrifice. It is not valor if you don't have skin in the game. So I think all three of us ain't never been scared to speak an honest truth and let corporate media deal with it as you will. But we live in service to a higher truth, and one that does not engage in debate with low-life, half-witted individuals who do nothing but regurgitate talking points from the White House. And that is what Jillian Michaels, the biggest loser, is in this moment. I think it's incredibly frightening that she's raising a black child with that ignorant ass attitude. And I detest her. I detest people who who share her viewpoints. I detest the people who voted for this administration. I find them to be, I don't honor or respect their positions at all. And so to present some of these things as though it is a debate, to present this as though, well, she says, that slavery wasn't that bad. And she says that slavery was really bad. Now you guys have at it. I think that is a danger. And when I had a platform on a major cable news network, I was willing to risk it all before I would dare ever let somebody sit on my set and say something that was, one, disrespectful to another guest, or disrespectful to our history and our facts. That is the standard by which I hold myself. I'm not arrogant enough to say what choices somebody else should make, but I think to watch CNN, the place where I began my career, to watch them devolve into this Jerry Springer type atmosphere is disgusting. And then when we step back and look at journalism as an industry, how it has failed at the most important time. It has failed and continues to fail. We never want to acknowledge white supremacy. They talk about this immigration policy that is the brainchild of Stephen Miller, who is a white supremacist. It's not an opinion. It's rooted in reporting by the Wall Street Journal. It is widely known. You will never hear an anchor introduce or reference Stephen Miller as a white supremacist.
Right.
Why? For the comfort of white folks. And so many of these discussions that I know what we talk about when the cameras aren't on. But when the cameras come on, people want to get polite. People want to both sides things. I don't do that. It's only one version of Tiffany. And I can attest it's only one version of Angela. It's only one version of Andrew. What we speak, we mean. We walk it like we talk it. And so I just think we have to have a higher accountability of having those types of discussions in a way that presents a lie and equates it with a fact, that presents somebody with an opinion and equates them with an expert. I have sat on that very show across from people who were neither my intellectual equal nor my professional equal on any level. And I just, we talked about this before, Angela, and a lot of the comments, thank you guys for weighing in, and I so appreciate everybody's thoughts. A lot of the comments, they were pretty mixed, Angela, and I am respecting your boundary, Angela, because you were clear on the last episode. I was trying to politely push, and Angela was like, just so I'm clear, so we don't have to discuss this again, I am not going on that show unless all three of us go together. So I completely respect that boundary. Beyond respecting the boundary, I respect you for having that position and that boundary. There were people who are like, Tiffany, I love that you go on there, because if it's nonsense, at least you're somebody who's going to push back on that. I gotta say, I feel torn. I feel really torn. You reminded me, you said, because you said you would never do that show. You reminded me of that. And I remember getting so mad at you. I never told you this, but you dropped in our group chat, you guys, Tiff is on Happy. And I was like, don't tell people I'm on the show. That's how I felt inside. Don't tell our friends I'm doing this show. Because I did have some shame, but I feel before Abby had this show, I was so proud of her. I love her voice, and I just think she's so beautiful, and she has such a great spirit, and I'm cheering for her because we have too few Black women on air, and I fear if Abby goes away, then who will take her it'll be somebody worse. Do we want Scott Jennings in that chair? So that's all my jumbled thoughts. Sorry for going on so long about it, but I don't know. I really want to hear from you guys.
Because people, even when they comment clearly, they are torn. If I have to choose between you going on or Candace Owens, duh, right?
Yeah.
But I think that if we've crossed the red line, and you said the red line has been crossed 100 times. What is our boundary? I don't want to make this again about whether or not we go on the show. That is so besides the point. Yeah. What I think is really at issue now is we have been reduced to the point of having a conversation about how the history of slavery will be told in our independent institutions, some that we help to fund, some that we help to build. McKissick was a key construction partner on the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We are now at the point where we are litigating the fact that white people are responsible for the institution of slavery, for the fact that white people are responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. I don't care if they were able to pick off a few Negroes. You all were able to do that in modern day times. That's how Clarence got on the Supreme Court. The hoochies are going to do what hoochies going to do. We have talked about this. So that we're fine. We understand that. What we're not fine with, what we don't understand, is why we even give audience to someone who would be so blatantly incorrect and gaslight us about the most traumatic incident in American history. The most traumatic for centuries. What are we talking about, right? So I think that really is it for me. And now, it started with him. I don't know if y'all remember when he ran in 16, and I think Andrew over there writing a sermon on the shaft.
I promise, I see Andrew over there writing.
You see that pen going?
Whatever about to come out of Andrew's mouth is going to be fire.
I don't want to interrupt anybody.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
But I will say this. But go ahead, please.
But I'm just thinking, he's writing an FU note. I really want to hear that note. But I'm just thinking, that we are in this time where we have an obligation to not just speak truth, but to speak truth to power, to call a thing, to hold these institutions that we have been beholden to, that we have been dedicated consumers of, to account. We ain't had no protest on this. We ain't had no meeting. We had meetings when people were just fired from the networks and wrote letters. Where's our meeting on the obligation of these people to hold? It's not a reality show.
Yeah.
It is news. It's news.
Yeah.
So let it be news. When Donald Trump was running the first time, y'all, and they were asked, I think they asked him about Harriet Tubman being on the $20 bill. And he said, maybe the $2 bill or something. We don't have Harriet on the 2 or the 20. And they took her off the National Park Service website. And they're making it more restrictive for us to get data from the census. And now they're wondering if they should do the census at all, or if the census should be private based on the conversation we just had with Sherrilyn, right? Here is where we are now. We are watching the erosion, the destruction, the blowing up of all of the institutions that we have built with our blood-soiled hands. This is not okay. We passed, it's a state of emergency. We're past, this is a code red. We're past sound the alarm. It is an all-out war, and that war is being executed on our babies in D.C. right now.
Yeah.
And that's the test ground. They are testing us. And y'all, we are failing. Sherrilyn gave us a D. What's lower than an F?
Yeah.
I guess we're and we're not supposed to say that no more on the show, but I want to be clear.
They told us we can't say that.
What other word can we use for right now?
Just get that beat button ready, because we're okay, Andrew. If you ain't got at least one your response, we don't want to hear it.
I don't have any F's to give.
I want to hear. He fresh out of F's. Okay.
I'll just say this. One, I have fewer pearls to clutch as it relates to the corporate media and how the corporate media handles their business. It is not new. I've been watching Jerry Springer on CNN for a very long time,
years.
Probably since I began consuming the news. I think to make Abby Phillips the object of the issue is misplacement of where we ought to be putting our concern. First of all, I said, and I apologize for interrupting, but where did this woman get the license, the Michaels woman? Well, she got it from Byron Donalds, a black man who sits in Congress, who is likely going to be the Republican nominee for governor of Florida with the endorsement of Donald Trump, who in blackface got out there telling us how good slavery was for black folks. The minstrel show, live and in effect, right in front of us, a black man, a grifter, telling us what was good for us because we were fed and housed and learned skills that we could then later apply to jobs that black people would eventually come to do in this country. So there's been a number. I appreciated Abby saying this show is intended to get out of the echo chamber. I never, ever, ever want to be again surprised on election night that there was a whole half of the country that walked away with an impression, a set of feelings that I had never heard, never thought, didn't believe they would give credence to. Abby, as a host, responded to the obscenity of and insaneness of what this woman was attempting to articulate. But across American networks, news channels, radio stations, platforms, that on the internet and otherwise, there are so many places where those comments would not have even been questioned because the listening audience, from the host to the people who tune in, believe it hook, line, and sinker. There is a war on black people. That energy is coming from somewhere. There is an audience for exactly this kind of bullshit that Michael spreads, but she's not the only one. We're getting it from black men and blackface who occupy only white spaces and who only intend to represent the interests, the beliefs of white people who are at the apex of all of this, simply offended and don't want their children to be offended by the history carried out by their ancestors. This is about ego. And since they're in position to check ego, they have every intent to check it everywhere it appears. What I appreciate is that now that we know that this narrative drives, fuels maybe a whole half of the country, then we can be better prepared when we come into contact with them about how we need to move, how we need to flow, and what checking we need to do real, live, and in person when we hear it. Because they're not just whispering it amongst themselves. They're saying it directly to you, listener. How are you checking them? How are you setting the record straight? Because the problem is way, way too big for any one personality to be able to handle, any one individual, and certainly a reluctant, if not cooperative, network, right?
Right.
And our harm. So we have to be the protectors of our harm. We have to be the protectors of our history. And as I have children matriculating through the public school system in a state where the governor doesn't want anything in the books or taught verbally from the teachers that would bring offense to his children, I goddamn know, Jay and I both, that we will have an obligation to do all of the history lessons or to at least supplement every era of history as my kids matriculate through it. Thank goodness I was a political science and history person, because I love it and I know it and they're going to get it. But I'm also appreciative to groups like Jack and Jill who are taking it as part of their responsibility amongst the kids who participate there to bring real Black history directly to them if they're not getting it from the schools that they pay for them to attend or that they attend publicly. And I think we've got to guard ourselves up, people, to fill that void. Because if they're not doing it there and you ain't doing it at home, God help our children when it comes to knowing your history so it doesn't get repeated.
Andrew, I really appreciate you lifting up the point about this not being a responsibility that is solely at Abby's feet. I think that's important. Everybody on this show certainly supports her, but I think that we are growing exhausted of watching this happen to sister after sister, brother after brother. And it happens in different ways. It's made manifest in different ways, but we have to call the thing out. So I think the question I would have for the audience is, what does it look like to support Abby in this moment and for the other Abbies that still find themselves on air, you know, in crosshairs, to have to even go on a show to say, I just want to be clear for the record, slavery is bad. When Jillian Michaels is saying white people bad, well, some of you all are. And actually, Heffa, by virtue of the fact that you on this show saying what you're saying, white people bad, especially you, right? So until you pass a different litmus test for what it means to stand in the gap for your Black child or for your Black friends, white people bad. And if y'all can't understand the distinction, I don't know what to tell you. Go to the Smithsonian before they change it, perhaps. With that, Angela, I guess we can go to call to action.
I just want to add to your request, which is to say, not only how do you stand in and support your folks, but also hold them accountable. That question needs to be extended to every network you watch and every news station on that network that you watch, where the hosts don't even check their guests when they come out of left field, right field, middle of space with their ideas. They've got to be more accountable to us, period, to Sherrilyn's point about us outboxing our weight. We have the power within ourselves to not just hold folks who look like us accountable, but the networks we watch, subscribe to, give money to, they get advertising dollars off of us. They ought to respect us enough not to do that bullshit either.
And we ought to respect ourselves enough not to give them and that's the part we do. I pray that we get to the point where it doesn't have to be all of us, but a small percentage of us do what we need to do to ensure the tide changes. They are not going to cower to us without a demand. We know that. Frederick Douglass told us that. History lessons have told us that over and over. Sorry, Tiff.
But what does that mean? Like, what is our demand? You know, like, what are we asking people to do? Is it don't watch? Is it... You know, I know you say don't go on there. Cord cutting is at an all-time high, particularly in Black households, and Black people consume a lot of media across all types of media. So we're already abandoning cable news. Streaming is like yanking them down, which I think is why we see some of these ridiculous tactics. Some of these people who are espousing ridiculous thoughts during the, opinion hour at 10 o'clock, you can see them on CNN's morning show. You can see them in the middle of the afternoon. So that's why I just try to caution people, like we're saying, this is not on Abby,
No.
This is, and it's not just on CNN either. This is
Of course
also
not.
MSNBC. I don't even consider Fox, but this is
It's MS now.
ABC. MS, that stupid ass name, but yes, but across networks, not even just the cable news, but across networks, the way that we normalize white supremacy for the comfort of white people. I don't know.
You said that, we can use that to transition into calls to action. And I'll say that my call to action first would be sign the petition to protect the integrity of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. There is a change.org petition. We'll make sure that that's in our show notes. Please hear me. I'm having a broader conversation beyond cable news, regular news, anybody news. I'm talking about all of the things that we need to do to hold these institutions accountable to properly serving us. Let's start with this Smithsonian petition. I think we need to be having meetings. There needs to be some folks who protest. We need to make sure that our folks are very clear about the facts of their power and what these institutions owe us. But let's start with the Smithsonian, and I'll yield.
Did you tell, just so I'm clear, did you tell people how they can sign the petition?
Yes, ma'am. While you were typing, I said that it will make sure we put it in the show notes.
It's going to be in show notes.
Yes.
Okay, I have a silly question.
Change.org is the site, right?
Okay. Because I was just about to say change.org, and I have a silly question. Like when we say we're putting something in the show notes, where is
so
that?
when
you watch
go,
on YouTube,
if you actually ever listen to our show, folks at home, you're gonna go into the podcast. You'll click on the podcast and there's a description. In the description is where we normally direct people to action-oriented items, and that is also the case for YouTube. So on the iHeart podcast app, or if you go into Apple Podcasts, in the description, you'll see any of our calls to action that are things that you can do from home.
Okay, sorry, that was for
sources
people like me.
I was simply going to just admonish our listeners and ourselves to to quickly check back in with Project 2025, as well as lessons around how to be an autocrat, because from the Smithsonian, trailing back to the beginning of the Trump days in the White House,
Wait, Andrew, from the what? The Smithsonian.
I said Smithsonian. Is that wrong?
You sounded country. I'm listening.
Oh, my bad.
Sorry.
Well, Florida.
You is country.
But from the Smithsonian, pulling all the way back to the beginning of this administration, one thing that we will never be able to accuse them of not saying the plan out loud. Not only has it been said, it's been written, and there is no harm in reading it to know what is coming down the pike. As we said on the other show a couple of weeks ago, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And we were talking about that in relation to the cities that have already been name checked around an invasion from the federal government and their likely brother sister states that want to go in using their law enforcement bodies to, again, harass and terrorize our people and our communities. I simply say to update ourselves so that we can then steady ourselves for it. We can steady ourselves for the fight. And when I say steady ourselves, I don't mean withstand it. I mean withstand it, yes, but also mean fight back. Prepare to fight back. Be ready so you don't have to get ready.
Well, now I'm ashamed of my CTA, but it's one I've given before, and I feel the need to give it again because it's getting a bit outrageous, and that is speakerphones. I don't know if people didn't miss it the first time, but people seem to think that, well, it's my kid, and my kid is playing with his iPad on the train. I take the Acela all the time, and so on Amtrak, I don't care if it's your kid. They need to have headphones on. We don't want to hear cartoons. And if we're sitting in the airport, get off speakerphone. I don't want you next to me. Like, use your earphones. Nobody wants to hear that. I know these are serious times, but this is a serious annoyance and frustration
peace of
for
mind.
me.
Yes. Peace of mind during these times.
I'm sitting there trying to be them, listening to music, and I got your it's so obnoxious. Stop doing that. I felt bad, y'all, because I don't care that it's kids. What? Tell me.
You said we don't want to hear cartoons. We want to hear. When the kids realized that we had the TVs in the car and that they could watch their shows wherever we were going, to school or on a long trip, of course, our lives became about listening to cartoons and other nonsense. I broke the ones in my car, and they have not worked since my kids were, I don't know, very, very young. And now when they're like, Daddy, can we listen to this? But nope, Daddy's TVs don't work.
I'm not mad about it.
I tried to get RJ to do the same, but because she's always complaining. I was like, my TV
I'm that
don't
person.
work.
I walk down because I'm like, who is playing this? And I go, and I don't care if it's a little family or foreign. They're like, oh, they don't have their headphones. Like, I'm sorry, but on Amtrak, you have to have devices that come with earphones. We all
so you're
can't
the
hear
resident
it.
fun snatcher of Amsterdam.
What? Like,
Well, were
teach
you
your
in
kids
the
the
quiet
patience.
car?
Let them read.
Were you
It was
in the
not the quiet
quiet
car. I shouldn't have
you
to
have
ride
to
in the
have
quiet car
headphones?
because, yes, you have to have it on
I
Amtrak.
didn't
You
know
know,
that.
of course, I looked at the rules. I'm a
good.
lawyer, a TV lawyer,
Right.
as we discussed.
Yes.
I looked
Who
at the
you
rules.
PLing?
You have to have an Amtrak. Maybe you all should start making this a part of the announcement so I don't have to because I don't work for
that's it.
Amtrak.
Maybe you could start and you could be like, I'm not the conductor, but I'm about to conduct some business. And speaking of conducting business, I'm about to shame Nick real quick. You guys. So Trav is one of our new producers, and Trav said he got very excited with Andrew. And so Trav says, turn up Andrew. And then Nick's response was done. FYI, the in-studio levels only affect the live conversation. The recording we get afterward is unaffected. And Trav was like, sorry, that was not an audio play.
That is a vernacular.
I didn't know where this was going.
That is a
but that is
vernacular. I caught it.
hilarious.
Wait, why
caught
did
it.
he say he gonna cut that out? If you cut it out, we cutting you out, Nick. We leaving this in the show.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
leaving this in the show.
Turn up.
Welcome.
Turn up.
That is
but you guys,
hilarious.
this is actually a perfect way to end the show because learning Ebonics and slang is a very important factor in terms of how we blend the democracy. Tying it right back into Sherrilyn.
I don't
you
like it.
gotta understand what we mean when we're talking that talk. And talking that
Yes.
talk
I don't
means
like
the
that.
truth.
And
Well,
that
honestly,
means listening
I
to people's
like
conversations.
No,
in the
I
grocery
do
store,
not.
on the
I don't
train.
mind if
now
Nick
Andrew's
knows.
going to be screaming in the show because there was a misunderstanding. So I just want to make
But
sure.
I like the things that we say to each other that is understood. I think there is fine. We'll let Nick know about this. Well, this might be something to talk about on the mini pod. I don't think it is good. I don't want everybody to understand something. If I'm at Angela's house, I'm like, girl, you put your foot in these greens. I don't want to explain to everybody else. Andrew Gillum.
Oh my God.
Now, why don't you answer it on speaker so you can make my point?
All right. And we're
You
done.
want to hear my mama?
Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome. Oh, wait, I have to say how many ridiculous days there are. I got a bunch of stuff to tell you before
we
we go
should
really
have asked
quickly.
Sherrilyn that. She would have got you together on that. She got me together.
We should have. That is a good question.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
She got me together.
We'll have her back when we get, we'll have her back to talk about that. But there are 439 days until midterm elections. And as always, we've reminded you a few times throughout the show, but it really does us a solid when you share, like, subscribe, do all the things because we come here every day living in service to you. So we want to make sure that you guys are spreading the word. We're available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you're looking for more shows like ours, please check out other shows on Reason Choice Media, including Politics with Jamel Hill. P.S. I'm super pissed off that ESPN canned the Colin Kaepernick documentary. But that's all I'll say about that. No time for my sports takes today. Off the Cup with SE Cup and our newest edition, who you guys know because we had him on this show. Now you know, with 13-year-old Noah DeBarrasso. And be sure to give all those shows a follow. And don't forget to follow us, of course, on social media and subscribe to our text or email list. For every 5th subscriber, I will give you Angela's personal cell phone. You can get
That's doxing. That's doxing.
NativeLandPod.com. We are Angela Rye, Andrew Gillum, and Tiffany Cross. Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome home.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rye, Gillum, and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth. Even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.